weapons were once used for battle. Now they're but humble tools for peace. I need to figure out exactly who I am. I want to choose my own path, live in the moment. My superheroing days are over. Remember what I told you? You ever feel lost? Just look into the eyes of the people that you love. Not me. What? Just listening.
Welcome back, everyone. Marvel just dropped a brand new IMAX version of the Thor Love and Thunder trailer with a bunch of extra footage, a bunch of extra Easter eggs, so we'll break it all down. I just did the same thing for the IMAX version of the Doctor Strange 2 trailer, so I'll link that below in the description. But if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. We're also doing an IMAX ticket giveaway for Doctor Strange 2 because it's coming out in a couple weeks. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and just leave your favorite new Easter egg from this IMAX version of the trailer on the video. But at the beginning part of the trailer, when they go through this montage and you get all the different versions of Thor and all his different costumes that he's worn, you see that classic-looking version of the Thor costume from Jack Kirby's original Thor comics when he first debuted in Journey into Mystery. It seems like he brings back his gold boots through all the different versions of the costume. Like, obviously, by the time he gets to his last upgrade in the movie, that blue-gold Rune King Thor-looking costume, it's very gold and blue. But even when he does his first upgrade, after he goes from Trucker Thor in the Avengers hat, Strongest Avenger, also written in Sharpie, Strongest, to the Eric Masterson-looking Thunderstrike 80s costume, which is actually just called Ravagers Thor, like he's supposed to think of himself as a member of the Ravagers when this is happening. He's still got the gold boots, and it sounds like he keeps them when he gets his next upgrade. Also, the other thing you probably notice is because of that extra IMAX footage, you see the extra belt buckle that he's wearing in that second costume upgrade. And the other big thing, too, is the second costume upgrade is basically a version of his Golden Thor costume that he wore after the Mighty Thor arc, which was the whole arc that introduced the Jane Foster version of Thor. That's the armor that he wore in the big Thor reboot during Volume 5, where he got the golden hammer and the golden arm. He wore it when he became King Thor, and he wore it during the War of Kings event, which was like another big Thor crossover event that pulled in the rest of the Marvel Universe, but it sort of spun around the Thor comics. I think there's actually a big Easter egg in there, too. What they're doing with the different characters and the place that they're taking them to during the movie, and how the Thor character evolved between all these different comic book events. But they're kind of mixing and matching a lot of different events from where they originally happened in the comics. Like, think about it this way. We all know that we're eventually headed for a giant Secret Wars event in the future of Marvel Phase 5, Marvel Phase 6, however soon they decided to do something like that. Because this is what's going on with the Thor character right now. So they're obviously doing the Mighty Thor arc from the comics where Jane Foster becomes a version of Thor. But the thing during that story arc, carrying through War of Kings and then up through Cosmic Thor more recently, they're kind of doing a version of Cosmic Thor in the background too here, is that eventually Thor realized that he was still worthy, became a version of King Thor, but then eventually got really tired, really bored with being actual king, and started dealing with way greater cosmic threats, like the Black Storm. He became the Herald of Galactus. That's when actual Cosmic Thor debuted. That version was almost as powerful as a version of Rune King Thor. Now, Rune King Thor, like I said, they're sort of mixing and matching Easter eggs from a bunch of different comic book story arcs going way back. He was a version of Thor who was also on the path to becoming a version of King Thor, but it was a very brief story arc where he became so powerful, so cosmic, that he sort of merged with the essence of the universe and was reborn, and things sort of rebooted Ragnarok style. So the whole idea during the trailer, Thor realizing his greater cosmic role, like, I need to find my place in the universe, is then putting him on the path to becoming a much more cosmic version of Thor, but obviously being just slightly different from what you saw in the comics. Chris Hemsworth said that he wanted to stick around as Thor in the MCU long term, but they need to find a way to evolve the character beyond a lot of the earthly concerns that he's had. He's been so preoccupied with what's happening around Earth, around Jane Foster. He's kind of neglected his duties as an actual god of the MCU, which is where you get to the Gorr the God Butcher storyline. A lot of the Gorr storyline is giving him that Rune King Thor storyline where it puts him through all these same types of trials that Odin went through when he was conquering the 9 realms and forming the Odin Force, becoming an actual god himself. And part of the reason for doing this is that so in the background, as they sort of spin up for their version of Secret Wars, when things become really crazy across the multiverse, Thor is much more capable, much more able to help and deal with these multiverse-level threats. There's a much better picture of the scene from the Gorr comics. This is directly taken from the comics when he and Korg are witnessing a god that Gorr has just killed, like they're seeing his aftermath. And this giant rat creature, who is a god, is actually one of Thor's friends in the comics, somebody who he knew. So this is him just learning how serious things are, but it seems like he doesn't totally know what's going on with Gorr yet. And this is what sort of sets him on the path to go back to New Asgard. Like he's worried, he goes back for answers, and he lands there just after Gorr has already attacked, like it's in the middle of an attack here when this is happening. Jane Foster also happened to be there and also already got the hammer when he shows up. That's why he's so surprised, like he didn't see any of this happening. You also probably noticed the Ravager's costume that he wears. He has a brand new shirt underneath that Eric Masterson-looking jacket. The design is sort of like a cosmic version of the design of the World Tree. He's also meant to be under a version of the World Tree when he's meditating on what he's going to do next, burying Stormbreaker in the ground. This isn't meant to be the actual World Tree, it's just meant to be like a really large tree. The World Tree is sort of like this metaphysical, giant cosmic thing that connects all the 9 realms. But based on this extra footage, what seems like happens is that when he goes back to New Asgard, learns about Jane Foster becoming a version of Thor, learns what happened with Mjolnir being able to reforge itself because of Odin's enchantment just being strong enough, it seems like they all go with Korg to Mount Olympus to find out what's actually going on with Gorr to try and chase him down. And for those of you asking, there is a bit of confusion here between what happened in the Eternals movie, where they come from in the comics, where the Greek gods come from in the comics, because some of the Eternals are based on some of the Greek gods, but as we learned, that's all fakery. That's just the Celestials just creating this backstory for them. But the Greek gods come from a version of Mount Olympus. Part of the Eternals' fake backstory is that they come from a place called Olympia, which is a completely different place in the comics. What it seems like they've done in the MCU, though, with Russell Crowe's version of Zeus and his pantheon of gods, is that this version of Mount Olympus exists the same way that Asgard existed relative to the Earth. So like they're saying that this version of Mount Olympus is probably a completely different place on a different planetoid. Based on the way this footage plays out, it seems like what happens is the upgrades to the Rune King Thor blue gold armor after he goes back to New Asgard, before he takes off again and takes the goat boat with him, with the cosmic goats from the comics. The whole thing with the goat boat, too, is that it also seems like they've used it in New Asgard because it has cocktails written in neon on it for all the tourism. And when Thor goes back and there's all this chaos with Gorr and then he leaves again to try and chase him down, he just steals the goat boat. Like, okay, I'm taking this and I'm taking a couple of the goats, too. Thor can use Stormbreaker to travel wherever he wants. He doesn't actually need the goats to do that. I think he's probably just doing this for fun because he has people with him. You see a little more footage of Russell Crowe's version of Zeus, and it seems like they're setting him up for a giant kill, like Gorr's going to show up and just mow through all these Mount Olympus Greek gods. But I think based on all this extra footage, them putting him on the path to becoming this more cosmic version of Thor, he might not literally die and be reborn, but it seems like he'll sacrifice his life in the process of trying to defeat Gorr, and in that process, become much more powerful. It's part of the whole idea of Norse mythology, Odin's trials that he went through to attain even greater power, and how Thor went through greater trials than what Odin went through to attain even greater power than Odin had. A lot of you also asking about Beta Ray Bill, so because I didn't talk about him in my previous Thor videos, the Corbinites, the race that he comes from, have already been featured in the Marvel movies recently, and Beta Ray Bill himself has already been featured in Thor Ragnarok. He was actually supposed to be featured on screen, but Kevin Feige said that they saw the footage of him and then realized that his storyline was going to be kind of short, so they decided to just save him for a storyline where they could feature him much more fully. But that's why you saw Beta Ray Bill's face on the Grandmaster's Tower. He was meant to be one of the previous winners of the Contest of Champions. Beta Ray Bill's version of Stormbreaker from the comics, that hammer, was also featured in the background of the Collector's Warehouse during Guardians of the Galaxy, during the Time Heist mission when they're back in 2014 and they show you what Thanos is doing attacking this planet. They're fighting these giant creatures in armor suits. Those are Corbinites. They're on the Corbinite homeworld when this is happening. So that's Beta Ray Bill's home planet. Beta Ray Bill was actually a regular Corbinite who was upgraded with technology to become this cyborg to fight against Firelord Surtur and his fire demons. But it seems like what they're doing for him in the MCU as part of this backstory is they're saying that Thanos, before he got all the Infinity Stones, basically took his entire army and balanced his planet old school style, and that's what caused them to turn Beta Ray Bill into the cyborg version of himself. Then somehow he wound up in the Grandmasters Contest of Champions, wound up winning that, and we'll just see what's happened to him since then. So if you spotted any other new things in the IMAX version of the trailer with the extra footage that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. Everyone click here for my Moon Knight Episode 5 trailer video, and click here for my full Moon Knight Episode 4 video and Easter eggs. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.